Good morning. Good morning. I'm not against teaching children, how to farm animals, how to care for animals, how to be responsible. I'm not against that. I'm not against farming either, as long as it's done with dignity to the animal and respect to the animal, in a light that I don't think most people are willing to stretch that far. Okay, so it's a lot stricter than what most people think of when they think of humane. It goes way beyond, your average, whatever you think of as humane. But I'm not against it, okay? I'm not like sitting here telling you to go vegan or not even vegetarian. What bothers me is that they are teaching these children basically they don't have a choice, to mindlessly raise an animal up for slaughter with no rhyme or reason. Not really. Like, by that I mean, have a rule here on my farm. The rule is that I value life over money, okay? And even with that rule, I'm able to not only break even, but actually make decent profit. Do I make as much profit as, when people run it like an industrial? No, okay? When people run it where it's not humane, truly, no, because this is what goes into it. It means that not only do you have to have a bunch of space for my animals, but in the event that something potentially goes to butcher, there's only two reasons why I'd ever do that. I never do it because the hen gets old and stops laying. I never do it just because someone hits butcher weight and I don't want to let them live out their full life. I don't want to feed them and waste the food on I never do it for that. Okay? I will never slaughter something just because it hits butcher weight, and most of the farmers say, well, it costs too much to keep them to have a normal lifespan. And I'm sitting here going, well, also a lot of this livestock, especially things like cattle, a lot of these people, when they go to butcher it, they waste half the meat. It's perfectly good meat that you can eat, and they throw it in the trash because they're lazy and they don't want to hire the people to do it. I don't know, but they do, and they're wasting money in all these other areas, and yet when it comes to the livelihood of the animal, that's when they're concerned. To give it a good life is wasting too much money. So I never cull anything because it gets old, because it's not breed perfect or whatever. Or because it's not making me money. I never do that. I never do it because it's just another mouth to feed. No. There's only two reasons why I'll do it. If the animal is so aggressive, and this happens a lot with roosters, if the animal is so aggressive that it is literally threatening to either seriously injure or kill another existing member or members of the flock, and that I cannot trust it with the flock, that I can't do anything with it because it is simply too aggressive, okay, goes to butcher. Or if, say, because it is free range, say for example a predator swoops down and injures it so badly that I know that no amount of veterinary care would allow it to live, okay, that it is going to die anyway, what I will do is I will humanely end its suffering. Does the two, if it's too aggressive or if it's suffering in some way, the only two times that I will send anything to butcher. And yet you're trying to force a child, mind you, to raise something up, care for it, train it, literally train it, because it needs to be docile enough to handle for the show, okay? Work with it every single day and night, love it, nurture it, only to turn around and hand it over for slaughter. And you're forcing a child. It's bad enough when you do that, you're forcing a child to do that. So it doesn't bother me so much farming as it is that people don't farm for the right reasons, and they don't butcher for the right reasons. They're in it for the money, and you know, they are too selfish and too greedy to lose that money, and instead work an honest business where you're respecting the animal, and yes, you don't make as much, but you make enough to make actual legitimate substantial profit. How is that possible? Because you utilize everything you can. You don't let anything go to waste, number one. So even using things like you know, their droppings and turning it into fertilizer, you know, literally using everything you've got. And also you're legit humane. You know, some people call humane a little patch of dirt that they just run around in with no grass and in a small little pen. Okay, and mind you, they still cull them when they stop making money, and they still call that humane. Okay, people will pay for a lot for truly humane raised things. They will pay double, sometimes triple, depending on where you live and all that. So you get what you give. The problem lies really a lot on the culture involving things like 4-H, because really the majority of these people I find usually believe in this really, really olden, like 200 years ago, maybe 150 years ago, but really olden style Abrahamic mindset where, and what I'm about to say are the verbatim words that they told me, okay, pretty much as closest as I can remember, okay. I'm not a computer, but you know, so they believe in things that, you know, most of us in the modern society don't, okay. They believe that animals don't have any feelings. Actually, they don't even have the ability to think for themselves. That's why they have instincts, because instincts think for them. They're mindless. Okay, that's first of all kind of how they see animals. They're looking at animals already as basically an inanimate object, because, you know, what else doesn't have any emotions, can't think for itself, and you know, it's just, I mean, you're not even giving it a heart or a brain. So what's the only thing that I could think of that doesn't have a heart or a brain? An inanimate object. So already, and then atop that, you know, they tell me, well, you know, everything on this earth was made for people. So that's like the only reason, like really selfishly, that's what they believe. They believe very selfishly that everything on Earth, in Earth, is meant for them. And no other reason why it's here except for it's meant for humanity. So basically their what they tell me their cause or their reason, you know, for not caring is, well, we can do what we want with it because, you know, it was made for us. How fucking selfish is that? Say that every animal basically on the planet and plants and whatever, you just because you're human, your species owns it. You know? And what this 4-H thing does, instead what the children are asked to do, that they're being taught only, you know, a mindless task of raise an animal up, kill it, raise it, kill it, raise it, kill it. And they're taught to suppress their emotions, they're taught not to love the animal, they're taught not to get attached, they're taught to basically rip their hearts out of their chest and light it on fire, and then, you know, watch it turn into ash, and then throw that ash into a river and watch it just disappear into the bottom, you know, of the sediment somewhere of the river. They're being asked to throw their hearts away and not be given a choice. And that is what this thing's about up here. I'm going to put a thing up here. That's about. A 9-year-old lass had a little wee goat. I think, what was his name? What was it? I can't remember his name right now. C something. What can't I remember? Anyway, and she named it. Is my point. She named it, and she obviously was really attached to it because she started crying. And if you want to look up the entire article, be my guest. If you don't believe me, she started crying. You know, in the pen, the little auction pen, and her mother. Thank goodness for people like her mother, because her mother actually saw that it was wrong and said, you know what, I don't care if this is against the stupid 4-H rules. I know what's really right here. My daughter obviously really loves this animal and I can't break her heart, so I'm just gonna take it. So what they did was they pleaded the 4-H. They took the goat because they knew that if they asked right up away that they would say no. So they took the goat, and then they immediately after they took the goat, they contacted the 4-H and said, they were honest, and they said, we have it, but we will pay all the money that was set to auction. We will pay every penny. We will also pay any extra expenses to you for housing the goat for us, for anything. We'll pay everything. We'll pay extra fees out of our own pockets, you know. And what the goat sold for was probably 3 times more than what it was really worth, and they were willing to pay every penny plus anything else, that any other kind of fee or penalty that was at stake. They just said, we'll pay it, but don't kill the goat. And they responded back with, if you don't bring us the goat by tomorrow, we're going to send law enforcement out to get it. Law enforcement came, did a gigantic search of the property, found the goat, took it back, and from what they say, they don't say who exactly slaughtered it, they just say a third party slaughtered the goat. But we assume that that third party was 4-H. So, they slaughtered the goat, and then they, you know, basically wrote back, you know, you've made a scene on Facebook, you've made a scene in social media, and you made a scene on, you know, the press, and you've made a scene in our local community, and we're really fucking pissed at you for making a scene, making us look bad, but we had no choice, because if we let this slide once, then all the children will do this. That was their thing. And I'm like, okay, why not though? I mean, why not set it up that way? Like I said, why not set it up for, you can raise the money, okay? And if the child wants to back out, they can. Actually, there's a law in the state of California. It says in this article, it says there's a law that allows minors to back out of a contract if in due good time. They backed out immediately right away, so that law was not abided to. Okay, so under that law in California, that goat should still be alive today, because the child immediately backed out of the, pretty much immediately backed out of the thing, and 4-H denied their request. The law says that if it's a minor, you need to adhere to that request. So, you know, I said there should be so many different ways that you can do this. In worst case scenario, you know, that money gets returned to somebody. But if you set it up like, okay, we've got this goat, we're just going to raise money for a charity or something. You auction off the money and it goes to the charity, but you don't get the goat. Or we're going to raise this goat, but it needs to go to a farm that we know is going to keep it and not kill it. Or, like I said, there can be a wee little section if you want to. There can be an actual section where, hey, we got this really mean goat that wants to murder all our other goats. And we actually do want you to butcher this. So this is going up for butcher, because we actually need to get rid of it, or he's going to kill somebody else. You know, I mean, I hate to say it, but that happens in farming. Just the other day, let me just actually take you to that in a minute. I have a quail that literally scalped the skin off of the other quail. And he was trying to do it to other quail as well. To go in there and find out who was doing it first, to make sure I got the right culprit. Didn't want to falsely imprison anyone, right? Let me just show you. Let's see. The quail that got injured, we're doctoring it up right now. It's been about 3 days. Let me just show you the injuries, how severe they are, and why I'm deciding to keep that one, the one that got injured, alive, and why the one that tried to kill him is going to be my dinner tonight. This is our aviary, by the way. So most people keep the quail in little tiny wee pens. We got about 45 quail max in this gigantic space. So big you can barely see the quail. There's one way back in the back there that you see walking way in, a little white quail. Yeah, that's how big it is. So right now we only got about 15ish. And we got one random pigeon that we adopted too as well. She's the one sitting there in the coop. But well, actually the door's open, you can see that, but she's in the perch there for right now. So believe in humane raise, humane slaughter, and a humane decision on who gets slaughtered and who doesn't. So let me show you that, okay? Let me show you the quail that got injured, and yeah, we will return when the quail, you know, fully heals up. We will return him back into this aviary. He just needs to heal up first. If you're not familiar, this stuff, when something gets injured, this is like kind of a natural way to prevent infection and promote healing and boost some immunity, okay? And it's kind of orangish brown, okay? It's a nasty orangish brown colour. And it turns the water an orangish brown. So we've got this in the water. FYI, that's why the water looks orange. That actually does wonders though for preventing infection and things. So we've got our little omega here that got bullied, and you can see the little patch on the head there that we're treating. It's a nasty looking scab, but you know, the entire skin got ripped off. So basically, if you'd imagine, literally, if someone pulled all the hair and skin, literally scalping you, that scab is the only thing holding his head together. So it looks gnarly, but it's the only thing that's preventing him from continuing to bleed. So it wanted to continue bleeding at every little thing when it first happened. So I had to wait a few days before I could really clean off these feathers. Every time I tried to clean off the feathers, it was just a tiny amount of touch. He'd shake his head or something and it would bleed. So what we're going to do is you're going to turn him upside down like this. He's going to fall asleep. Eventually he's going to fall asleep. He's a lot more still. If you can get him upside down like this, he's a lot more still for you, and a lot less likely that you'll, especially when I'm using scissors, I want him to be as sleepy as possible so that I don't accidentally nick something. I don't want to cut it any shorter than that because I'm too afraid that I get his skin instead of his feathers. So most people be like, why do this? Why save the one, especially if it's got a bad injury like that? Well, you know, actually quail are really resilient, and it might look gnarly, but actually this will heal up in 2 weeks time and you won't even be able to tell, much less a scar. I mean, you'll see a scar but nothing else. And then in a month all the feathers grow back. Why would I slaughter this rooster, the nice rooster, just because it got injured? No, I want to slaughter the one. And I don't understand that because, like most people, you know, if something gets injured, they get straight to butcher. Especially if it's an omega like this, straight to butcher. People say, well, what good is the omega? Well, for one thing, you don't have to worry about him hurting your hens or anything else. But especially if it's a rooster, they're like, why keep it? It's injured, whatever. Keep the strong one. Well, the strong one's going to keep, you know, killing off your other ones. So you find the bully, you get it out there. Most people are too dumb to realise. I know it feels funny. He's shaking his head. Most people are too dumb to realise that they're not all ganging up on one. That's not normally usually what happens. It's one or two or three that decide to bully individuals, and that is why I've done what I've done. Most people are like, oh well, if it gets this badly hurt, then everybody must be after it. And it doesn't do any favours because, you know, when they got a shiny, all birds are attracted to shiny things. When they bleed, it's shiny. And so even the nice ones are like, ooh, what's that shiny thing on your head? And people assume that everybody's ganging up on it. No. So, about a week or so more of being in here and then it'll be good to go. I wanted that to heal up. Yeah, so don't get rid of the aftermath of the problem. Get rid of the problem itself. This right here is the aftermath. This, ladies and gents, is the well-marinated, ready-to-cook problem. Problems are very tasty. We're just going to let that cook while I do the rest of this. We also have some free-range chickens, and whether it be chickens or quail, whoever, whatever. But, you know, you find some mean ones, like these are mean ones from birth, what I call natural-born jerks. But the one that I actually just put in the oven was not a natural-born jerk. It became that way after it hit puberty and got a bunch of testosterone hormones in it. I try my very best every breeding season with the quail. I try my very best. I always miss one or two. Most of the time when I miss one or two, I can catch the problem before we get an injury. But this time, unfortunately, you know, if you farm, you realize that you can try to be perfect and prevent every disaster, but it's impossible to prevent every single disaster. There will be some times where you don't get it in time and you don't see it. One day they're nice, the next day they're mean. That shift in hormones, especially with quail, because they do have an actual breeding season. They're a lot like, you know, a stag in rut. So they're very unpredictable. You don't always catch it, but the good thing is that with quail and with chickens, with almost anything, if you've tested it through one breeding season, then that will be its true personality every breeding season to follow. We've got some quail in the aviary now that bred last season, we're keeping for the second season because they've proven themselves, you know, and to not, you know, ever hurt anyone. Just pan out here, okay, and then we're going to turn around, and that is the ones that are nice that we're keeping. Those are all our chicks, chicken chicks that are nice. And like I said, that may change. Some of them, some of the roos may get a little mean. Eventually we'll have to thin them out, but for the most part, you know, at least for now, we give them a chance. We give them, even the roosters, a chance, as long as they get along with everybody. And like I said, this one will be out with all the rest of the quail again. In about a week or so, we'll release it back into the aviary. But these animals are always treated with dignity. Even the ones that are set to butcher, you know, are butchered in such a way that it's as humane and painless as possible, with as little amount of suffering as possible. It's not about doing what's easy or what will make you the most money. It's about doing what's morally right. And I think people have lost touch with that. People have lost touch with it so much that they're willing to do these kinds of things in these kinds of situations. To teach children about farming as if the animal were an inanimate object. And it's all right to teach children about farming and how to farm, and even how to slaughter something, or at least send something to the butcher. It's all right to teach them that. But if you remove all of the morals from it, and you just train your child to see the animal as an inanimate object, and just expects your child not to, you know, have any emotion whatsoever, that's dangerous. That's teaching your child to be heartless. I mean, when something absolutely has to be butchered, you would explain to the child, this is why. If we don't do this, this animal is going to kill other animals. We don't really have much of a choice, that kind of thing. Or, hey, you know, it got attacked by a coyote or something. It's not going to make it. The vet can't fix it. So the only humane method here is to put it out of its misery. That kind of thing. But teaching a child the barbaricism of, get over it, it's just an animal, we're going to teach you a lesson, so we're going to kill it anyway, even though you said you wanted to keep it alive. I mean, that just takes it to the next level. I mean, 4-H alone is barbaric, but that really took it to the next level. And I just felt like I had to say something, because, you know, there is a grey, there is an in-between. It's not for everybody, okay? But there is an in-between. And, you know, I don't think that the way to go about these things makes any sense, you know, when they're doing it through the way that they're doing it. You know, and it's just, I could go on and on and on about all the different topics, but I won't. That this kind of ideology, this kind of old-fashioned ideology, is in all different areas of life, is affecting children negatively. I could go on and on about that, but I won't, because I promised I'd keep this to farming. But I'm just saying it's a widespread issue, and the more that you train children to be emotionless, you know, the more of a chance that one day, when they really need their emotions to make moral decisions in real life, that it will fail them. Oh, little Jibby, it's time. Okay, go back home. Freedom. You don't want nothing to do with me, do you?